It is legal to install a 50 amp 208/120 volts one-phase distribution panel under a kitchen cabinet in a commercial kitchen. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, Section 225.30 requires sufficient workspace around electrical equipment to facilitate maintenance and troubleshooting. The NEC does not specify a minimum clearance distance, but it recommends following the manufacturer's instructions. NEC Section 310.15b6 specifically exempts kitchen equipment from the workspace requirement for distribution panels, provided that the panel is accessible and can be readily operated without removing appliances or fixtures. Most distribution panel manufacturers provide specific instructions for the required workspace around their panels. If the kitchen equipment supplier is following the manufacturer's instructions, then the installation is likely in compliance with the NEC. The panel should be easily accessible for maintenance and operation. This means it should not be blocked by appliances or equipment. There should be sufficient clearance around the panel to allow for proper ventilation and safe handling of tools. The panel should be installed in a location where it will not be subject to water or other hazards. Firstly, accessibility. The panel should be easily accessible for maintenance and operation. This means it should not be blocked by appliances or equipment. Secondly, clearance. There should be sufficient clearance around the panel to allow for proper ventilation and safe handling of tools. Thirdly, safety. The panel should be installed in a location where it will not be subject to water or other hazard. While the installation is technically legal, it is always advisable to consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and standards. They can also provide recommendations for improving accessibility and safety. When dealing with electrical installations, understanding the National Electrical Code, or NEC, is paramount. The NEC sets the standard for safe electrical design, installation, and inspection to protect people and property from electrical hazards. Let's delve deeper into specific aspects relevant to your question about the distribution panel. NEC 110.26 is crucial for understanding workspace requirements. This section mandates sufficient access and working space around all electrical equipment operating at 600 volts nominal or less to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. This space must be clear and unobstructed. The depth of the working space depends on the voltage to ground and the condition of the exposed live parts on one or both sides of the equipment. For instance, condition 1, where there are exposed live parts on one side and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space, the minimum clear distance can range from 3 feet for 150 volts or less to 3.5 feet for 151 to 600 volts. Condition 2, which applies when there are exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side, or where grounded parts are on both sides, necessitates greater clearance. The minimum clear distance ranges from 3 feet for 150 volts or less to 4 feet for 151 to 600 volts. Condition 3, the most restrictive, applies when there are exposed live parts on both sides of the working space. Here, the minimum clear distance is 3 feet for 150 volts or less and 4 feet for 151 to 600 volts. The height of the working space must be at least 6.5 feet or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. The width of the working space should be the width of the equipment or 30 inches, whichever is greater. This ensures that personnel have enough room to safely perform tasks. NEC 312.11 provides additional guidance on enclosure requirements. It specifies that enclosures for switches, overcurrent devices, and other control equipment shall not be used as raceways for conductors unless specific conditions are met. This provision aims to prevent overcrowding and potential damage to conductors within the enclosure. NEC 408.3 addresses panel board requirements. It mandates that all panel boards be clearly marked to indicate the circuit number, purpose, or both. This ensures that users can easily identify and operate the correct circuit. The panel board must also be installed in a cabinet or enclosure designed for the purpose and listed by a qualified testing laboratory. In the specific scenario you described, the NEC does provide an exception under NEC 310.15b6 for kitchen equipment. This section allows for the installation of distribution panels without the standard workspace requirements if the panel is accessible and can be readily operated without removing appliances or fixtures. However, accessibility remains a critical factor. The panel must be easily reached and operated without needing to move or disconnect any surrounding equipment. Consulting with a qualified electrician is essential to ensure compliance with all relevant codes and standards. An electrician can assess the specific installation conditions, interpret the NEC requirements accurately, and provide recommendations to enhance safety and accessibility. They can also verify that the installation complies with local amendments or interpretations of the NEC. In addition to the NEC requirements, always adhere to the manufacturer's instructions for the distribution panel. These instructions provide specific guidance on installation, operation, and maintenance. Following these instructions ensures that the equipment is installed correctly and operates safely. Addressing potential electrical hazards is critical. Ensure that the distribution panel is installed in a location where it will not be exposed to water, grease, or other contaminants common in commercial kitchens. Proper ventilation is also essential to prevent overheating. Regularly inspect the panel for signs of damage or wear. Replace any damaged components immediately. Remember, safety should always be the top priority when working with electrical equipment. If you are unsure about any aspect of the installation, consult a qualified electrician. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it is always best to seek professional assistance when needed. Here is a more detailed breakdown of the considerations for installing a distribution panel in a commercial kitchen, keeping in mind the legal and safety aspects. Firstly, let's consider the accessibility requirements. While the NEC permits installing a distribution panel under a kitchen cabinet, it emphasizes that the panel must be readily accessible. This means that the panel should not be obstructed by any appliances, equipment, or stored items. Employees should be able to reach the panel quickly and easily in case of an emergency or for routine maintenance. Secondly, think about the working space. Even though NEC Section 310.15b6 provides an exception for kitchen equipment regarding workspace, some working space is still implied. The area around the panel should be large enough for a person to stand comfortably and operate the panel safely. There should be enough room to open the panel door fully and access the breakers or fuses inside. Thirdly, we can address ventilation. Distribution panels generate heat during operation. Adequate ventilation is crucial to prevent overheating and potential equipment failure. Installing a panel under a cabinet can restrict airflow, so it's essential to ensure that there is sufficient ventilation to dissipate heat. This might involve leaving space around the panel or installing ventilation fans. Fourthly, think about environmental factors. Commercial kitchens are often harsh environments with exposure to water, grease, and other contaminants. The distribution panel should be protected from these elements to prevent corrosion and electrical hazards. Consider using a panel enclosure that is rated for wet or damp locations. Fifthly, let's address the manufacturer's instructions. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing a distribution panel. These instructions provide specific guidance on mounting, wiring, and grounding the panel. Deviating from the manufacturer's instructions can void a warranty and create safety hazards. Sixthly, it is important to think about electrical load calculations. Ensure that the distribution panel is sized appropriately for the electrical load it will serve. Overloading a panel can cause overheating, breaker tripping, and potential fire hazards. Consult with a qualified electrician to perform a load calculation and determine the appropriate panel size. Seventh, we should address overcurrent protection. Each circuit in the distribution panel must be protected by an overcurrent device such as a circuit breaker or fuse. These devices are designed to trip or blow when the current exceeds the safe limit, preventing damage to equipment and reducing the risk of fire. Eighth is grounding and bonding. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety. The distribution panel must be properly grounded to provide a path for fault current to flow back to the source, tripping the overcurrent device. Bonding ensures that all metal parts of the electrical system are at the same electrical potential, reducing the risk of electric shock. Ninth, we can address labeling and identification. Clearly label each circuit breaker or fuse in the distribution panel to indicate the equipment it serves. This makes it easier to identify and troubleshoot electrical problems. Use a permanent marking method that is resistant to fading or smudging. 10th, and finally, we can talk about regular maintenance. Schedule regular maintenance inspections of the distribution panel to identify and correct any potential problems. Check for loose connections, corrosion, and damaged components. Replace any worn or damaged parts immediately. Remember that working with electricity can be dangerous. If you are not qualified to perform electrical work, hire a licensed electrician to do the job. Electrical work should always be performed in accordance with applicable codes and regulations. In summary, while the NEC allows for the installation of a distribution panel under a kitchen cabinet in certain circumstances, it is essential to carefully consider all of the relevant factors to ensure safety and compliance. Consulting with a qualified electrician is always recommended. Think of this a bit like the analogy of building a house. The NEC, or National Electrical Code, is like the overall building code. It sets the minimum standards for electrical safety. The manufacturer's instructions are like the blueprints for a specific appliance or piece of equipment. They provide detailed guidance on how to install and operate that particular item. A qualified electrician is like a skilled contractor. They have the knowledge and experience to interpret the building code, follow the blueprints, and ensure that the house is built safely and correctly. Trying to install a distribution panel without understanding the NEC and following the manufacturer's instructions would be like trying to build a house without a building code or blueprints. It might be possible, but it would be risky and potentially dangerous. Hiring a qualified electrician is like hiring a skilled contractor. They can ensure that the job is done right and that the electrical system is safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations.